identity project is a oh, I have it there. Is an educational choose your own adventure game aimed towards secondary, the younger years in secondary school, to help them explore their identity and help them understand more LGBT-centric issues. So, aims and purposes. I aim to create at least a demo prologue that would oh, I'm just repeating myself now. Sorry. Okay, I'll just go on to why.
Yeah, read it.
Okay. So I'll just repeat myself again. The aim is to create at least a prologue / demo educational choose your own adventure game that will aid teachers in teaching the younger generation about LGBTQA plus centric issues, and to let them explore and understand themselves through how they decide to identify themselves through gender and sexuality. I want to create this because there's already a lack of educational video games within the market and in schools in general, as I don't think many teachers really realise that video games can be a creative medium that can be used in such a broad and wide way, and can be used to help children interact more with sort of their environment. I also find that there's a lack in education around the LGBT sort of issues, since even though it's it's not a relatively new thing, but it's becoming more and more ingrained within our society, that it as we open our minds up to exploring ourselves on a deeper personal level.
Do you mean prototype?
Yeah, prototype. Yeah, prototype.
That's fine.
Or prologue. Sort of.
Yeah.
Since if I were to create a bigger game, this would be like the prologue, and then I'd go on to do different parts.
Yeah.
And
have you got evidence for what's being taught in schools at the moment? Have you done your research?
Yeah, but I don't have that here right now, since I
fine.
completely slipped my mind when I was creating this.
But you have done the research, and that's in your site for teachers are currently.
I just need to.
Fine. And do you mean primary level? Have you got your audience data somewhere?
Yeah, I was going to come to that.
Fine.
I've got
That's
so and then and I hope that out of this project I'll be able to sort of gain a better insight into making these sort of games and pushing my abilities further, as well as no, I'm just going to continue. So some background research and some primary research here. It's a mix of audience and sort of so I conducted a piece of research that asked teachers at my old secondary school whether they would buy an educational game, or whether they would use it to aid their teaching. And I found it quite interesting that the majority said that they would, and that video games can be educational, and there's only a minority that say maybe, and perhaps the people.
And was that based on quality that they said maybe?
Quality. Since
there are not context, quality.
Yeah, because a lot of games, educational games that exist, they're quite rubbish. Poor quality. Counting numbers 1, 2, 3, and even though I'd already chosen my topic, I just wanted to ask them what kind of stuff they would like to see themselves. So the majority were mainly like mental health, global warming, the standard stuff, but some other people had some rather creative ideas, such as something that was quite quite near to my own idea,
Yeah.
which was how students can sort of develop themselves through a game
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff.
Great.
And then I also asked whether people had found any games that had helped them, and one of the reasons I conducted this piece of research in the first place was to ask to find out whether teachers in general find that there's a lack of games, well, specifically educational games in the market, and I do find that after conducting like this piece of research,
And for teachers,
there
it's
is
great.
yeah.
Because your lesson's done.
Pretty much, yes.
It is good. Good. Okay. Thank
Yes.
you. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay, so let's just zoom through this.
Zoom through.
So I've already talked about the audience,
Yeah,
so let's
and
just
let's just. Can I just see?
Yeah.
11 to 15.
11 to 15.
And can I just very quickly see if you've? If you don't
Yeah.
mind.
I kind of like, I wasn't quite sure about doing sort of
you're going to
psychographics.
state
or-
school.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
since it's quite such a big,
yes.
kind of difficult to, but I think I'll definitely need to research a bit more into that.
I think
Yeah.
you do, because what's interesting is this as a subject area is very sensitive in some districts and boroughs
Yeah.
and places, and that's what's going to be quite interesting. Why have you chosen this subject?
Like the sort of this subject in
Yeah.
general. I think partly it's my own personal reasons,
Yeah.
and sort of my passion for
Equality.
like, people equality, and
Yeah.
how helping people understand that you can be whoever you want without any judgment,
Yeah.
and just to and sort of my passion within like
Yeah.
improving the sort of educational system in general,
Yeah.
since it's quite old school.
Yeah.
Um,
I've tried to do assemblies on this in schools.
yeah,
I've
it's-
had very mixed responses, let's just say.
yeah.
Which I'm happy to talk you through sometime, my experiences with it.
And then talked about the teacher stuff, and then my initial ideas.
Okay.
I went onto Pinterest to just
Yeah.
put down some colors.
Yeah.
To sort of look at some of the sort of stereotypes of color schemes and stuff,
Yeah.
and sort of to slowly build up sort of a big color bank
Yeah.
of ideas. So we've got, it's quite
Yeah. Why have you chosen to go with stereotyping of colours?
So because I don't know, colors is a big thing that people use to identify
Yeah.
themselves with, and even though these colors don't necessarily
Yeah.
define a certain person and their identity,
Yeah.
it helps other people understand why who they are.
Yeah.
And it was just a foundation. I wasn't going to completely stereotype it on these colours. It was just to, get the project going
Yeah.
before I,
It's a start.
yeah,
Yeah.
a start. So that's all the. Let's just scroll through
Yeah.
those again. Oh,
Okay, I'll give you like 4 minutes because
Okay.
you restarted. Yeah.
and then I sort of made a mood board of sort of similar
Yeah.
games and sort of the style that I wanted to go through for. This is sort of like a mix of text and
Yeah.
illustration. I pulled inspiration from, I don't have many screen caps here, but this webcomic called Homestuck, which is quite, it's got like a panel of illustration and then like text underneath,
That's fun.
which and then you can click through, and then
Yeah.
it's quite interactive as well.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be a interesting way to format the game
Yeah.
going forward. And then I did some sketches on some of the fashion.
Nice.
And I talked about the mood boards, and then I started looking at some sort of formatting.
Yeah, 'cause
whether
you've got to go against stereotyping with all of these
yeah,
things. Yeah.
sort of thinking of some of the mechanics, and then my next steps, the final thing. So I'll have to, next up, I'll have to start actually going into the program and getting used to the interface so I can start actually creating.
So you are going to deliver a prototype?
Yeah.
What are you going to make that in?
So I found this engine that allows you to create your own choose your own adventure games.
Okay.
It's called Inkle, and it's quite flexible. And then I was also going to start thinking about the dialogue and script to.
So you're going to create a script?
Yeah.
You're going to create visuals?
Visuals.
Post artwork?
Yeah. And posters.
Yeah.
And I was
social
thinking.
media page?
Yeah. And I was thinking, on Instagram, most likely.
Yeah.
And I was thinking for the animation/motion graphics, I was going to implement that into the game and have just small animations to sort of enhance the immersion and interactivity.
That's absolutely fine. I don't expect you to do motion graphics if you're making a prototype at all. That's your focus. Okay. Right, couple of questions then.
Yeah, sure.
So for your research,
Yes.
have you... this is where your audience and research link in.
Yeah.
Because actually it's a mainstream audience you're going for.
Yeah.
Because you're going into schools and you've got to target the mainstream. So you need that word somewhere.
Yeah.
I would say. Okay. BBC, have you looked at any mainstream LGBT media products? Have you done any research on that?
One of my things going forward was to dig deeper into this sort of media and different types of games that already exist that cover these issues.
Definitely.
Since I think I have found a couple of those sort of choices games that go into these issues as well. So
I would, if I were you, look at all. Don't just look at LGBTQ media.
Yeah, look at everything.
Look at everything.
Yeah.
Find out what a mainstream audience is and what they relate to. Because I think almost the most powerful representation of LGBTQ in a mainstream situation is to have somebody that looks like them, lives like them, shops in the same places, wears the same clothes, but just happens to be LGBT. Okay? So, because then there's hooks they can relate. And that's when you can get them
you don't want to alienate them.
Want to alienate. So with a mainstream audience, find out what makes them tick. Use those visuals. It might not be. You can have your side characters that are kind of like a bit more interesting, a bit more dynamic, but also definitely have your mainstream characters. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a lovely idea. I think it's going to be a really nice product. I think you've got all capabilities of making something look really lovely. Go on to other gaming sites like BBC Bytes.
But I was going to look at that since
that's probably the biggest interactive platform for education, I would say.
It is.
That I know of.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. I think secondary is interesting because there's loads of focus at the moment on primary education and LGBTQ and a lot of like political interference from parents. But when you get to secondary, parents are a bit more hands off.
Yeah, the thing is, I didn't decide to focus on primary because they're not quite at that age yet. It's
they're
like
not at puberty.
11 to 15 is the age where the developmental stage where you decide this is who I want to be because I'm starting to grow into my own person.
Absolutely, I think it's a good age to do it, and I'd say years 7 and 8 if you're going to be more specific about it. But I'm happy to talk you through my experiences. Being quite shocking in some places.
Yeah.
But I think it's great. Okay. I'm going to have a good read through it because obviously we whizzed through it.
Yeah. Should I stop?
Stop.